the war effort has stalled. In Canada, our lack of supply greatly hinders progress. Italy's taken most of France, stopping us from progressing in Europe. Our fuel storage is emptied, meaning that trading and troop movement over water is no longer possible. Our division count in Africa remains low, forcing us to take defensive positions near Egypt. And finally, we're at war with two huge superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. But we're working to fix these issues. Production is exclusively focused on synthetic fuel, all units requiring fuel have been halted, and we're working to rebuild our supply. Italy begins justifying against us. This could become a huge problem. It means that we'll have to fight against them in Europe with inadequate fuel supplies and division numbers, since most of our units are in Canada. It also means that our few divisions stationed against France and Africa will be even more stretched while attempting to hold the Suez. As their justification continues, I work to mediate a deal with Italy. Eventually, I concede to join Italy's alliance. This temporary measure will allow us to avoid war, but joining their alliance was a blessing in disguise. Italy, also at war with half the world, was protecting their trade routes with their massive navy. This meant that even though I lacked fuel, the Italian navy was protecting the seas. Supply was restored in Canada. Trade could resume with outside nations. The deal with Italy had saved our war effort. With our divisions in Canada now fully supplied, I could, once again, begin pushing. It would be difficult, as I was up against both Canadian divisions and American divisions. But the Americans were also distracted with invading Mexico, which meant pushing into Canada was not an impossible task. At the same time, Germany and Japan went to war with the Soviet Union. Would Germany destroy the Soviets, secure more oil for us to trade with, and destroy one of our biggest enemies? Or would the Union push past Berlin and invade our strongest ally? All questions to be answered soon. But I couldn't worry about that. I had a Canada to push into. The push was slow and steady. We began in October 1941, and by November, we already had the potential breakthrough in the South. American troops were reinforcing, but we were pushing quickly. The Northern Front continued their resistance until I rerouted my southern push to aim north. The Americans quickly abandoned their positions. By January, our divisions were on the gates of Ottawa and on the border of New England. Germany had pushed deep into the Soviet Union, taking Sevastopol and inching towards Moscow. The tide had turned in our favor. With Ottawa secured, our new task was to invade New England and push into the American East Coast. But Mexico had capitulated, meaning further pushes would have more resistance due to the US's ability to redeploy their divisions and our comparatively small North American presence. By late summer of 1942, our divisions were entering New York and had secured most of New England. I now shifted the entirety of my focus onto the USA. Germany had also secured the oil in the USSR, taking the huge resource advantage away from our enemies. By now, though, the fuel crisis was completely solved. Our stockpiles were full, our planes once again controlled the skies. The American front became a grind, but progress did remain steady. As we secured the last counties in New York, stepped into Pennsylvania, and flooded into Virginia, Germany capitulated the Soviet Union. Now, in January 1943, the enemy factions truly were on the retreat. At the same time, Italy had granted me more access to French territory, better positions for the future. Our troops began pouring into the United States. As US resistance lessened, our divisions also thinned. Whose army would capitulate first? For the Americans, capitulation would cost them everything. For us, capitulation would cost us the Western Hemisphere. Our invasion continued relatively unopposed until August 1943, when the Americans capitulated. In the peace deal, all of America, Mexico, and parts of Europe, including the Soviet Union and France, were up for grabs. I took all I could. The result? I annexed northern France, most of French Africa, all of French Indochina, the Benelux region, and Eastern America. I puppeted Central America, Mexico, Western USA, Canada, and parts of Russia. Germany seized Eastern Russia, Poland, and the Baltic countries. Italy annexed parts of Yugoslavia. Spain annexed southern France. And Japan gained the Dutch East Indies. That's going to be it for this week's episode. If you'd like to see me continue, my next plan would be to invade Italy and nationalist Spain. If not, go ahead and leave a comment of what you'd like to see next. But until next week, take care. Bye-bye.